Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of THE Student. I'm Jamie Ramacati, Head of Content for Student Events at THE, and today I get to step away from my usual role of presenting to our student audience and play host for our very special launch event. I'm joined today by several of my colleagues, and we are so excited to share with you everything we've been working on. We're also thrilled to be joined by Wendy Alexander, Vice Principal International at the University of Dundee, and the newly appointed chair of the THE Student Advisory Board. Wendy will be joining me for a short discussion later in our event. We have a lot to share with you today, including an exclusive first look at data and insights from our global panel of students, the THE Student Pulse, and of course, an overview of all of the features, tools, and products related to THE Student. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Patrick Hayes, Chief Development Officer at THE, and the driving force behind the creation of THE Student. Patrick, over to you.
Good morning from the UK, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the almost 600 senior leaders from across the sector around the world that have convened here today to mark the official launch of THE Students. This year, Times Higher Education will be celebrating its 50th anniversary, and it's proudly served the academic community and the community of HE professionals for 5 decades. When I first started at the Times Supplements back in 2003, the newspaper that you see here was very much the Times Higher proposition, much loved and read by academics and HE professionals in the UK and beyond. And I must say, personally, my father is an academic, and the THE newspaper with its distinctive red masthead was always on our kitchen room table as I was growing up. But in 2004, a transformation happened at THE that radically expanded THE's readership and audience. That was the launch of the World University Rankings, the first attempt to bring about a global benchmark of quality institutions across the world. The launch of the World University Rankings gave academics, HE professionals, and students the data to make evidence-based decisions around which institutions are the very best in the world and which institutions are best for them. And the work of Phil Beatty, Duncan Ross, and the fantastic data teams at THE have informed the decision-making of countless millions of prospective international students over the past 17 years. Indeed, in the last year alone, we have had over 15 million prospective international students come to our platform and consulting THE when making one of the very biggest life decisions they'll ever make: where best to study abroad. But until now, the THE proposition has revolved almost exclusively around academic and HE professionals. And that's why I'm so delighted to launch THE Student today, which will be as dedicated to providing advice and guidance to prospective international students as Times Higher Education has been to the academic and HE professional community over the past 50 years. Now, we have incredibly ambitious plans for the proposition and to rapidly scale our student audience coming to the site. But we're sufficiently humble to know we can't provide students with all the supports they need ourselves. We're very fortunate in that the global ecosystem of suppliers to prospective students is one of the most supportive, innovative, dynamic, and collaborative that I've ever experienced. And we've decided to not try and do it all ourselves, but to work with the whole industry to support students. And we've carefully curated a network of trusted partners, from startups to multinationals, but all who share our ethos of putting the students' needs at the heart of everything they do. Now, it will take more time than we actually have in this session for me to sing the praises of all of these companies individually, and I wish I had the opportunity to do so. But I just want to give a shout out to each one of our trusted partners that have been so fundamental in the building of the student proposition. AECC Global, Akiro, Apply Boards, BMI, Casita, Common Purpose, Crimson, Into, Liberica, Pearson, Sensations, Shorelight, SIUK, who are our very first trusted partner, study portals that fuel our course listings on THE Student, the Ambassador platform and virtual internships. This is a growing network of trusted partners, and there'll be more announcements to come soon, but we want to collaborate with the whole industry. And next month, we'll be launching our suppliers directory, which will feature over 2,500 suppliers from the prospective student ecosystem. As you'll see reported in Times Higher Education this morning, our student panel have told us it's difficult to know which suppliers to trust. So in the long-standing spirit of Times Higher Education, we're going to be providing them with a directory so they can make informed choices for themselves. Now, before we showcase the student proposition, I want to say some heartfelt thank yous. Firstly, of course, to our trusted partners, many of whom are here today. I just thank you for all of your support in building out this proposition. But I also want to say a big thank you to the Times Higher Education boards, who saw the need to invest in THE students during a global pandemic to provide students with advice and guidance at a time when they need it the most. So a big thank you to our chairman, Chris Stibbs, our CEO, Paul Howarth, who's believed so passionately in the student proposition. To Inflection, we couldn't have wished for better private equity backers and Inflection in building out this proposition. So thank you to Derek, Cameron, and the whole Inflection team. And of course, to Nick and Paul, who have offered such fundamental support when it comes to financial, commercial, and operational support. I also have to say a personal thank you to Ian Evans. Now, we've been discussing the need for a student proposition at THE for almost a decade now, and I'm so pleased that we've been able to collaborate so closely in finally making it a reality. I must also sing the praises of the fantastic team we've developed at THE Student and across the Times Higher Education business. It's such a passionate, driven, talented team who believe so strongly in what we're trying to achieve. And even though the team was formed during lockdown, they've moved mountains to get us to where we are today. Many of us still haven't met face to face, but I'm looking forward to doing that soon. And I couldn't be more excited to be working with you in the months and years ahead. Now, I would sing the praises of all of you individually as well, but I have to say a personal thank you to Catalina Powell, our operations director, who has been the linchpin of the entire THE student operation, ensuring things get done and this launch is possible. Thank you, Catalina. And the final thank you I have to give is to the THE Student Advisory Board, chaired by Wendy Alexander, who's been recently appointed. But this is a diverse global advisory board that will have oversight of our activities. So Wendy, Bernard, David, Fanta, Jessica, Tanya, thank you for joining the board and giving us your independent views on how you think we should take the proposition forwards. Last but very much not least, I want to say thank you to the many thousands of students that have provided advice and feedback as we build out the student proposition. The decision to study abroad is one of the biggest financial decisions and life decisions they'll ever make. And we feel a strong sense of responsibility to ensure the millions of students who come to us each year get the advice and guidance they need. Their needs will always be at the forefront of our proposition. And I'll now hand over appropriately to Liz Shepherds, who manages our student panel, to give you an overview of what our student community are saying at the moment, particularly during the global pandemic. So that's all from me. THE Student has now officially launched.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It's an incredible honour, and of course, thank you, Jamie, for your warm words of introduction today and at every student event. My name, excuse me, is Elizabeth Shepherd, and I'm the Managing Director of Times Higher Education's Consultancy Division. And it's my absolute honour to represent my team here today. I'm going to take the next 8 minutes or so to present a preview of the policy brief produced by my team specifically for today's event. We are able to bring you this insight and this future opportunity for 2 reasons. The first is the vision of Paul Howarth, Patrick Hayes, and the whole of the Times Higher Education team to create THE Student. And at some incredible point last year, embark on the creation of the world's most comprehensive panel of international students. The second reason is the dedication and extraordinary hard work of my team, particularly Mark Tweddle and Sam Whitaker, the designers and developers of THE Student Pulse. I thank you both very much indeed. The findings I will present to you today are taken from the most recent survey powered by THE Student Pulse. So since October last year, we have been growing, engaging, and supporting our expanding panel of international students. This is to ensure that the response that we receive is comprehensive, representative, and allows us to quickly understand the changing dynamics of the global recruitment market. As you can see on the slide here, this particular survey that was run over the preceding few weeks, we received just over 3,000 responses from our panelists. And it's the findings from this particular survey that have been included within the policy briefing that I'm sure that Patrick, Kat and team will inform all of our delegates that today's event will be sent to you after today's session, and that have given us this insight that we wanted to inform institutional decision making at this incredibly important point. I think we can all understand and have all experienced over the past 12 to 18 months, excuse me, the incredibly crowded newsscape. This is still an ever-moving picture, and the impact of coronavirus on traditional flows of international students around the world is still not yet known. We can only look to the recent incredible devastation across India to understand that the consequences of coronavirus on what have been established traditional flows of international students in and out of the higher education sector around the world is still not yet clear. What is clear is that we require more high quality data to inform institutional decision making. And it's with this in mind that we conducted our particular recent survey that informs the policy brief that you will receive after today's event. So first and foremost, we wanted to understand the impact of COVID-19 on international student flows and decisions. And you can see the data on the screen in front of you. We first and foremost asked participants in our survey if their plans to study abroad had been disrupted by the global pandemic. In response to this question, 39% of respondents suggested that their plans to study abroad had not been disrupted. Now, this is consistent from the earliest data that Patrick and I have been collecting since October last year, and these proportions have remained largely consistent, which is encouraging if we are planning based on this data. 39% of our respondents said that their plans had been delayed, but they still planned to study abroad, but later than they had originally intended. I think if we look to the bottom of this screen, some of the most interesting data that we as a team have been able to reflect on to date. When we asked students how their plans to study abroad had been changed, the largest proportion, 52%, said they intended to go to a different country. This to me is fascinating, the potential impact on international student mobility that we will see not just in 2021, but in 2022, 2023, and so on and so forth. So we all understand, and certainly our colleagues who are developing the Times Higher Education campus, incredible resources to support sharing best practice around online teaching and learning. We've all understood the expedited need for teaching and learning to be transferred online. We wanted to understand from our student panelists to what extent they agreed or disagreed that online learning with an international university would be a worthwhile experience. We can see that there is a relatively positive response to this question from our panelists, 42% in overall agreement. However, when we dig into this a little bit more to understand the potential appetite for online learning, it was only a 28% positive response when asking students if online learning with an international university would be better than studying face-to-face in their home country. I think I always go back to the early 2000s when we began to understand and collect data on the global flows of international students around the world. The original motivators for students to study outside their home country was seeking a quality education. But I think what we can understand, particularly from the growth in participation, as Patrick mentioned at the beginning of today's session, in the World University Rankings, of high quality higher education provision growing so much around the world, that I think the transition to online learning has to be put into that context to understand the quality provision from universities all around the world. We then wanted to try to understand in more details the overall concerns had by our global community of international students. So here I can present data that describes the concerns of students regarding studying abroad during the pandemic. I think what we've understood is that students are still trying to embark on their original plans and their original journeys. So we tried to put into context their concerns around undertaking their studies within this unprecedented climate. As we can see, their concerns were varied and many, but what really stands out, I think, to us is first and foremost financial difficulties, 48% of our student panelists, difficulties regarding the ability to travel to their intended study destination. Of course, this is something that we've all experienced and continue to experience, the lack of the ability to travel internationally, and this is of course a concern for students. What we have really resonated on within our team is the fifth response here, that it may be, for example, more difficult for students to engage in extracurricular activities. I think highlighting how much the pandemic situation has impacted the experiential value of tertiary education. I think the role of education agents is one that's been key throughout the growth and expansion of international higher education over the past 20 years, and it's certainly been issues around quality assurance, certification, and the quality and the access to resources that agents provide for this growing and incredibly important community of international students around the world. We wanted to understand at this point, at this juncture, from our prospective international students, prior to this survey, so prior to April or May 2021, how would they describe their knowledge of education agents? And we can think a very interesting response. I think when we look at the net response presented at the bottom of this graph of students who have heard of education agents, we can see that that is a large proportion, 64%, with 33% having at least some knowledge. The perspective of this group was overall generally positive of the role that agents play, and I'm sure that colleagues and representatives of organisations and institutions and agencies all over the world will be keenly watching the role of agents as we move forward and how we can all support students to make their decisions. Last, but by no means least, we wanted to understand, as of now, the issues faced by students when deciding where to study. We wanted to understand, if the traditional issues, the traditional barriers had been usurped in the current environment where there was a lack of face-to-face support, a lack of opportunities to engage with the kind of traditional guidance that international students seek when making their study decisions. And I think my final thoughts before handing back to Jamie and Wendy is that fundamentally students, 49% of our just over 3,000 panelists had found it difficult to find information about courses in universities. They had found it difficult to trust the information that they found and had found the amount of information overwhelming. I think this to me resonates so much with the goals of the THE student team, that we endeavour to support students with trusted sources of information so that they can make informed decisions that will support their international higher education journeys going forward. So it's with that I'll say thank you very much and hand over to Jamie, not before saying happy birthday.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to bring in Wendy Alexander, who I mentioned is the Vice Principal International at the University of Dundee, but is also the newly appointed chair of the THE Student Advisory Board. Wendy, thanks for joining me today. And if I can, I'd just like to ask you a few questions to help share some insights and commentary on some of the data that Liz has just shared with us. And first, I'd like to begin with, I think, one of the early pieces of information that Liz surfaced, which is just the notion that students are having to adapt or change their plans because of the circumstances. And I'd love to hear from you. Certainly, what are you seeing at Dundee, but also what are you hearing and seeing more broadly from your counterparts at other institutions about student mobility heading into the coming year?
So thank you, Jamie. Happy birthday. Can I say on behalf of all of the advisory board, we're completely delighted to be on board with what I think is going to be a really, really exciting and timely initiative. Coming to the study, it's true that the sector is hungry for information because we are mid-pandemic in many countries and in the early phases of recovery. And for a generation of students whose schooling studies have already been hugely disrupted over the last 18 months. Can I come to what I think we are seeing? I think there are a couple of universal trends and there are a couple of geographic specific trends. I think the universal trend is that international students are looking for as much certainty as possible on the offer. Will it be face-to-face next year? How much of it will be face-to-face? And that's partly because their schooling has been so disrupted laterally. I think there is more willingness than we saw last year to accept blended elements. There's no demand for every lecture to be face-to-face, but they do want to know what the offer is going to be in terms of those elements of the experience that can and should be face-to-face. I think there is more willingness by students to self-isolate than last year, and for those from red countries to quarantine. I think the other thing that we're seeing that is a new universal for this year is very late decision making, partly because of exam delays in some areas, most recently in South Asia. I think we're seeing a slight difference between UG and TPG. I think we're seeing undergraduates desperate to go on with their education, understanding that it's a 3-year commitment, whereas there are top postgraduates, they're coming to the UK, it's a 1-year program very often, and thinking, maybe I should defer till I'm absolutely certain that I get that fully rounded face-to-face experience. And that sort of flux is making it harder for institutions to predict where we're going to be in the autumn. I think finally the geographic specific trends, again, a continuation of last year, and the data showed this. Health security considerations dominating in East Asia and in Southeast Asia, and economic concerns, ones of funding and economic impact of the pandemic, dominating in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. I think we are seeing that in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, we're seeing overall demand rising, a desire to be at international universities studying there. Lots of questions about access to vaccine, access to healthcare, but they are trump cards for some of the destination countries. I think in East Asia, we are seeing a concern about students coming to a completely globalized environment to work, and so people are still looking for reassurance on the health security issues. So as I say, a really strong variation, and there's been much talk in recent years about the domination of East Asia in the UK market, certainly, and I think one of the impacts of the pandemic is to moderate that, and we will one of the benefits is that we will end up with perhaps an overall more diverse student community of the kind that people have talked about for years. But one of the few upsides of the pandemic is it may help deliver that.
Great, thanks, Wendy. I should just interrupt our chat for 1 second to say that I know there are a handful of questions about access to the data that Liz has shared. I want to let everyone know that everyone who has attended today will receive a follow-up from today's event, which will include a copy of the full report, the data and the insights from that student pulse. So you'll definitely be able to get your hands on that. Wendy, you brought up the issue of hybrid learning, virtual learning. Will we be face to face? Won't we be face to face? And those concerns. And I think Liz also surfaced 4 in 10 prospective international students saying that online learning with an international university would be a worthwhile experience. So of course, I guess there is some appetite for students to say, if I can carry on with my education and this is the only option, that's worthwhile for me. But I do know also that universities are, of course, eager to welcome international students back to campus and have them face-to-face in the classroom as soon as is safely possible. And I think we've all learned that there are some merits to virtual learning. There are some things that we will probably take away from that and keep. What elements of virtual or hybrid learning do you think will stick around? And how do you think that this impacts the overall student experience for international students?
So I think rightly students are demanding the best of both worlds. There's no going back to the beforehand. They want the best of blended. They do also want a face-to-face experience. Part of being an international student is the cultural immersion. You build a global network, you've lifelong friends, you've access to employment, you get to do lab, studio work, and the buzz of great tutorials. So all of that face-to-face and learning and getting to know another country, it's not possible to replicate online, but that co-curricular and extracurricular is harder to replicate online. And as others have suggested, there's fantastic work being done by THE to share good practice on that. But if you come to the academic side of things, then I think, we are not going back to the old pedagogies of there's nobody saying to me, I want a professor who is the sage on the stage and lectures at me for an hour. I want them to be a coach on the side. And I think of the things that we will keep are things like coursework being entirely available, e-content. I think students want timely feedback. They absolutely want digital interaction throughout all pedagogies. They want video content to be at the heart of what they're doing. The nature of assessment has been changed. And I think also in many ways, really the nature of the power relationship of higher education is changing, because this is a generation of students who their shopping experience isn't bricks or clicks. They want both. They want to be able to click and they want to be able to go to the store. And in many ways, that That's what they bring to education. They also want the choice. They absolutely want to be able to listen to every single lecture recorded when they hear a difficult accent like mine with somebody talking too fast. They want to be able to listen on demand for that, but they also absolutely want to be able to be, you know, in the studio creating that fantastic piece of artwork, or in the lab doing the experiment. So I think we are moving to, on the academic side, keeping the best of all worlds, and it will simply not be possible to deliver an excellent module in the future unless it is digitally enabled in a huge range of ways that we're just beginning to scratch the surface of.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, through THE Campus, THE is certainly hoping to provide as many resources as possible in terms of digital education and best practices in that space. Liz shared a slide also that illustrated some of students' top concerns, and we know that those concerns are changing and evolving, and we're seeing concerns from international students sort of pop up on that chart that we wouldn't have seen a year ago, 18 months ago. One of the things Liz highlighted was, you know, the ability to participate in extracurricular activities. And I think as I look at that data, you know, as someone who has worked with international students quite a bit, I think, you know, gosh, that inability to build community and to build connections with other students and to have that really holistic experience as a university student. Things like, again, the difficulty of engaging in extracurricular activities, the potential for students to be living in lockdown and be isolated when they are far away from friends and family, and other concerns that are very specifically related to the circumstances that we find ourselves in. How do you think universities and student services providers and anyone who's working in this ecosystem with students can adapt the ways in which they are engaging with students, particularly international students, to help alleviate some of these very specific but very real and very serious concerns?
Yeah. So I would encourage, and many universities are doing this already, really regular pulse surveys. I mean, that's obviously what THE students are bringing. You really, really have to moment by moment listen to your students. And can I say from our experience at Dundee, when we did that, instead of talking about international students, we found that there were two really distinct segments. There were the international students who were on campus, who were suffering some loneliness and were remote, and there were ways to address their issues. And then there were our offshore remote learners who had a completely different set of issues. And had we not regularly pulse served, we wouldn't have been able to segment what the issues were. So for the students that you have on campus, and if we end up having, you know, periods of temporary lockdown again, I'm talking from Glasgow now, we've been in permanent lockdown, it feels like, for the last 6 months. Those issues were soluble. You know, how did you get people into bubbles? How did you have regular check-ins with them? We started our academic staff having walking meetings. We had a huge Christmas dinner that was socially distanced. We had cool cooking competitions. You know, we really focused on how to have buddies, but also a home country parent from the local community. How do we move all of our Global Room activities online? So that was soluble. We had ways for our student services to do that. Where we struggled was, how did we ensure that the quality of experience for our remote learners, notably in China, who were learning online, was the same as if they'd been on campus? And so we spent a lot of time in the last year setting up a Chinese Student Services Hub, which will be a one-stop shop for everything that those Chinese students might want, which isn't something we manage on campus. So they'll be able to get, you know, English language help, IT help desk, academic skills, student services, all rolled into one in the same time zone in their own language. And one of the things we've learned there is, if you don't nail the connectivity issue, you are just playing at it. So the two, you know, we played around with the JISC Alibaba link that many people here will have used, lots of other VPNs. You need to be connected to participate. And also getting the platform right, not just for the functionality of the task, but also for the geography. So I think that's the other area where we'll see a further evolution. And the final thing I would say is that you cannot do too much IT onboarding to enable the whole experience. So there's some of the lessons we've learned, but it all came from pulse surveys of international students that we hadn't done in quite this way before.
Thanks, Wendy. And I, of course, can't let you go without asking you and talking a little bit about THE Student, where you see THE Student fitting into the student recruitment landscape and how we know that space is evolving. We're obviously delighted to have you on the advisory board, but I'd love to just have your comments on sort of how THE fits in the ecosystem that we're in now.
So thank you. Look, I'm really excited to be part of this, and I'm maybe not quite as old as Patrick, maybe older, but when he said, you know, that THE is trusted as a source of knowledge and support and advice, that's true for institutions. The question is, how do we take that to students? How do we give students knowledge, advice, and support? And I think THE is to be commended that they're not trying to be Big Brother and say, you know, we know exactly how international students should do that. They're saying we will make that journey easy for tech-savvy students by bringing together the best that's out there and doing the due diligence and making sure it's a trusted and safe space. Because the truth is, as a 16 to 18-year-old, or even as a top postgraduate, you only make the decision to buy an international education once. You know, it's going to consume every halfpenny that your parents, grandparents have pulled together to make that journey possible. So you don't come to this as a hugely savvy buyer. It's a once in a lifetime decision. And you need somebody to do some of the hard work for you to say, this is a safe space to find out all the things you need to know to make the journey and the landing everything that everyone wishes for you. And I think the other thing to say, and maybe that this is for those who specialize in this space, there is a revolution going on in international student recruitment. And I think the best analogy is the travel industry. It's not mine, people use it all the time, but it's used because it is the best analogy. I mean, when I was a student, I walked along the high street and I went into Ensley when I wanted to go. It was a dedicated specialist student travel agency. We went to travel agencies to plan our holidays. And that was swept away in a period of a decade by TripAdvisor, Expedia, and Skyscanner. And we now all search for our own flights. And what that did was take the inefficiency out of the system. It let you choose the holiday, the destination, the place you wanted to go. And in many ways, that is what's happening in the world of international student search. We know there are 6 million senior students and, you know, graduate or undergraduates looking to study abroad. About 2 million of them come every year. And we know there are 3,000 institutions that would love to have them. And it's just crazy for that matching process of 6 million students to 3,000 institutions be done any other way than being technology enabled. We've seen it work in the international travel industry. We need to make it work in the student search space because it will deliver better outcomes for everyone. It will be a win-win that the student finds the course, the country, and the university that's right for them, and so their journey gets off to a fantastic start. Now, that all sounds very Pollyannish, and it is a transformation. It puts more power into the hands of the student to own their own journey. But it's not going to be without its challenges. There are going to be glitches, technical issues of conflicts of interest. And that's why I think an approach that says by THE to say, look, we're a trusted brand, we value our brand, we want to enable that extraordinary journey, but we understand that we need to do it with students at the heart of it. And we're not naive that there are issues. I take one example, just data sharing. You know, my kids share everything about themselves. I share nothing. So if you have, 20 trusted partners and the students want to share between them, there just are some issues that we need to try and work through. But the destination is the right one because it puts students in charge of choosing or making the right choice for the most important choice they will ever make. And that's something fantastic for all of us in the board to be involved with.
Wendy, thank you so much. We're obviously very excited to have your expertise at the helm of our advisory board. And we're so looking forward to your continued guidance and insights as THE Student grows and develops. So thank you so much. I will now hand it over to my colleagues on the THE Student team who will walk you through the THE Student platform and the tools and resources available. It's my pleasure to introduce Diane Sequeira, Head of Product, Sarah Custer, Associate Editor, Curation, and Catalina Powell, Director of Operations.
Empowering, supportive, and trusted are the brand values that have guided the new student platform design and sit at the heart of every interaction we have with millions of students visiting our site. We know making the decision to study abroad can be a daunting one. Overwhelmed with choice and pressure to make the right decisions, students have told us that it's a complex and often challenging journey from that first Google search to life on campus. The THE student platform, developed by an incredibly talented product design and engineering team, cuts through that noise by empowering students to make the right choices, supporting them on their study journey. And we do this by providing a trusted platform supported by the strong reputation and heritage brand of THE, helping students meet their aspirations. The student platform is easy to use with a mobile responsive interface that closely follows the study abroad life cycle. Intuitive user journeys help students discover the breadth of services and content offered through the provision of trusted university rankings, unbiased, high-quality curated content, informative webinars, events, and student festivals, partner and service recommendations, and course search. This platform is largely set up as a referral engine, giving access to the expertise of our trusted partners, and is optimized for registration conversion. The intention is to put the student in control of these relationships by giving them the choice to opt in to receive these expert partner services, advice, and assistance. Clarity of information and visual cues are at the heart of this design, simplifying the decision-making process. The most recent product feature that's been launched in collaboration with study portals is Course Search, giving students the ability to find and compare up to 130,000 courses offered by universities worldwide. An accessible interface enables students to discover courses by subject, institution, and location, and they can further narrow down these options using the faceted search functionality. They have the ability to find out more about the courses either by visiting the study portal site or by viewing the enhanced course information where provided directly by universities. Needless to say that in the first 5 days of it going live, it's the most used feature on the site. We have a searchable international suppliers directory going live next, which aims to build a community of suppliers ranging from financial services, accommodation providers, international agents, and many more, giving students confidence at every decision point. I'm also happy to confirm to you all that every supplier attending the launch event today will be listed in this directory. I'd also like to take this opportunity to share some of our future plans. We'll soon be offering, in collaboration with Common Purpose, an employability online course, giving students key skills and real-world insights that top global employers look for. We expect this to be the first of hopefully many paid-for online courses offered on this student platform. We will also be entering the peer-to-peer conversation space with our partner, the Ambassador platform, which gives prospective students the ability to interact with current students at universities they aspire to attend and learning firsthand about the institution or area of study that they're interested in. Following on from that, we plan to enhance the platform for optimal discovery of relevant information through intelligent searching, trending topics, and dynamic user profiles. I'll now pass over to Sarah Custer, who will be speaking more about the content that the platform relies on to be successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Custer, the Associate Editor for Curation here at THE and THE Student. Just to take you through a little bit of what we were doing on the editorial side of THE Student. So editorial content for students on THE began in 2015, actually, but at that time, it was mostly covering our World University rankings, mostly focused on a student audience based in the UK. Now, what we're doing on THE Student now is clearly building on THE's 50 years of journalism, mostly providing objective, independent content for our academic audience, but we're now moving into doing that for our growing international student audience. And that's really sitting at the heart of our mission for THE Student Editorial, is providing that objective and independent editorial content. So we now have a beautiful website that Diane has just walked you through. We have an expanded team on our editorial side. We're providing current and evergreen content, advice and guidance for international students. So that's everything from travel updates around COVID-19 to showing what student life is like whenever you're studying online, to helping with university interview or applications. And we also have our weekly student newsletter that went weekly just at the beginning of this year. And we're engaging over 130,000 international students on that on a weekly basis. And just a point that Wendy made in terms of really giving the choice back to students, that's part of what we're trying to do with THE Student Editorial. And it's empowering students to make those difficult decisions, whether that be through coverage of THE rankings, providing them lists of the best universities in the UK, or students learning about universities that are really making progress on issues that matter to them, like tackling gender equality. We're also giving them advice and guidance on how to prepare for an online university interview, how to choose the correct university agent, and obviously anything around funding and costs that we all know is really important to international students. So helping them really cost what this journey is going to look like for them in a variety of study destinations. We're also bringing in the student voice and voice from academics. We know that peer-to-peer guidance and peer-to-peer advice from international students is really important to them whenever they're making this decision. And also bringing in some of the voices from the people that they'll be learning from and studying with whenever they actually do go to their university to study. Visa information, obviously a huge thing for international students and a topic that's constantly changing. So we're on board, on deck, trying to give the most up-to-date information as that stuff is changing. Especially we're seeing a lot of that now with COVID-19, and English language tests, another big issue for international students. So really breaking that down for them, telling them what universities are accepting which, what to expect, how to prepare for it, where they can take it, how they're going to take it, everything that they would want to know, and really doing a bit of that heavy lifting that Wendy had mentioned for international students so that they can find all of that information there and hopefully make a better decision for themselves. I'll now hand over to Catalina Powell for a talk about our products and services.
Thank you very much, Sarah. What we aim to do here at THE Student is to create that one place where prospective international students come, and their parents, of course, come and find what they need, as we said, to inform those all important decisions around who to trust with their or their child's education. Those 15 million students that we have been mentioning come to Times Higher Education website every year. Well, they come because they trust us. And at THE Student, we leverage that reputation that has been built over the many years to provide a very wide range of products and services, which are essentially designed to make students' journey easier. But as students interact with us, it just naturally opens up spaces where we can surface sponsored content that is very targeted to the student audience, thanks to our ability to segment to a very high level of detail. What I would like to do here is to share with you some of the examples of the type of engagement that we have available to both institutions and companies. So, for example, commissioning a consultancy project using our student panel of international students, which, by the way, includes prospective students as well as current undergraduates and postgraduates from all over the world. You saw a very good example today with the policy briefing that Liz shared earlier in the presentation, and that, again, to reiterate, will be made available to all attendees here at the event. You could also be featuring sponsored articles that could be either standalone or part of a series, such as our recently launched Clearing Hub, sending highly targeted direct marketing emails to the specific audience that you want to be talking to, programmatic advertising, on-site, off-site, social media retargeting, etc. For institutions looking to recruit more students to a particular program, we offer the ability to enhance their course on our course search, and similarly with the suppliers directory that is coming up very shortly, companies will also have the ability to enhance their listing when the students are looking for suppliers. We have banners and content that can be included in our weekly newsletter. You could be sponsoring and co-hosting a webinar that we will help you curate to make sure that is very relevant to your brand. For institutions wanting to take part in our peer-to-peer platform, there will also be an opportunity, and this is the one that we'll be launching shortly, or participating in some of our highlight events, such as Careers Week, or our very exciting upcoming student festivals that you might have heard about already. But there are two important parts here to highlight. So first of all, that the content will always be relevant and clearly labeled as sponsored. And second, that the student will always have full control over who or what to opt into. And we do this to maintain the student experience at the very center of THE Student, and to empower them. So this safe space that Wendy mentioned earlier, which is very, very important and the center of what we are doing at THE Student, but also from the point of view of the institution or the company that we are engaging with. Because when you combine a highly engaged student with content that is relevant and carefully targeted, you will naturally get a better result, which is a more meaningful interaction with your brand, which is ultimately what we all want. This was only meant to be a very quick walkthrough, but if you would like to find out more about any of the things that we've discussed today, we have a series of workshops, the first one of which is taking place on the 9th of June, but we will be sending you more details via email if you would like to take part.
Thank you, Kat and Sarah and Diane, for the inside look at all of the features and tools and resources available through THE Student. As Kat mentioned, we'll be hosting some follow-up sessions in early June for anyone who would like to do a deeper dive on some of the products and opportunities available. I guess all that's left is for me to say a massive thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to introduce you to THE Student. Special thanks to Wendy and all of our advisory board members. As a reminder, everyone who has attended today will receive a follow-up, which will include the full report from the Pulse survey that Liz debuted earlier. And I should just say that today's launch is really just the beginning. You can expect to hear many more exciting announcements and opportunities for collaboration in the very near future. On behalf of the entire team at THE Student, thanks for being a part of our launch, and we will see you soon.